When you think about college students these days, Delaney, to what extent do you think Instagram versus TikTok is a more effective tool?
Oh gosh. I don't know if there's like a breakup of generations and their preferred social media accounts
Mm,
because my brother, who's definitely Gen Z,
mm,
uses TikTok a lot.
mm,
Um, but I'm right in the middle of like Gen Z and millennial, and a lot of people that I surround myself with primarily use Instagram and
mm,
refuse to get a TikTok.
mm.
So there's only like a 7-year age gap difference in there. And I feel like, especially maybe high school students, I would say TikTok, but are also active on Instagram. And maybe in college, it can be a mixture of TikTok or Instagram and up.
Mm.
Um, I know a lot of people that I hang out with only have an Instagram. I don't think they really use Facebook anymore, which is just, it's so weird where different age groups are gravitating towards which social media accounts.
Mm. That's interesting. That's really interesting because, yeah. And is TikTok only video?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And I would
That's
say
just,
making TikToks are harder than doing Instagram posts.
hmm, right, right. Because you gotta be creative in getting people's attention. And yeah, it, I always associate it with dance videos. Is there something kind of what's kind of the dominant use of TikTok besides dance videos?
Um, I don't even have a TikTok account, but from what I see on Instagram, a lot of the TikTok videos will come over to Instagram. I think it's a mixture of dance videos and also just like a couple minute comedic clips of stuff that people can relate to, or like a joke, something like that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I remember when I talked to Amanda about this several months ago because we were thinking through, okay, how do we engage this demographic better? Um, she had yeah, she had, what did she say? Oh yeah, she said that it's kind of an escape that that people of that age. Oh, great, we got a question from Lance, so we'll answer that. Okay. Does HEC have outreach at Indiana college campuses? Well, um, I'll kind of answer that in a historical perspective, and I think Delaney can weigh in more recently. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's been challenging, uh, but I would say that we actually experimented with having a statewide campus program. It was called, I think, the Indiana Campus Sustainability Initiative. It's something we started in the first couple years that I became ED back in 2008 and 2009. And we used a platform called Ning, N-I-N-G, which, Delaney, have you ever heard of that, by the way?
I've not.
Okay. So it um, shows how old school that is. Uh, oh,
Okay.
so he can't hear us, I guess. But yeah, we had this thing called Ning, which essentially is in some ways a caveman version of Facebook. You've got your pictures of all of your people on the screen, and you can message uh, one, or you can message a couple of them. And anyway, we tried that effort, and I think that students are busy, and so um, we attempted to essentially have campus leads at each of the different key universities. And the problem we were running into is that they were the people who cared most about these issues were also ones who had already a number of volunteer commitments on their plate. So we couldn't sustain kind of a decentralized leadership model this way. So that's sort of kind of a sad story, but on a positive note, HEC has been a very consistent presence in many different campuses. I personally have had the opportunity to speak at IU, DePaul, Wabash, Hanover, Notre Dame, Purdue, of course, Delaney's alma mater. And yeah, that's been one means, as has been guest lecturing at various campuses among broader members of the staff. And Delaney, I'm sure you can speak to that here and now.
Yes. I'm trying to get more student outreach done. I know that when I was in my undergraduate at Purdue, when I was trying to find environmental organizations in Indiana, HEC was the first one to come up. And so I started following the organization, even though I hadn't had any contact with HEC at Purdue. And I think with climate change in the last election actually becoming one of the top issues that a lot of younger voters and high school students, that is almost their top issue currently. And so I think there'll be a decent growth, hopefully sustained growth, with outreach opportunities with high school and new young voters in the state of Indiana. But I think a big challenge, of course, is trying to find these students and really create meaningful engagement with them. So we're definitely working on that constantly.
Delaney, as a Purdue alum, do you want to take a first crack at Laura's question about bringing green groups together? She's at Purdue.
Bringing. Okay. Yes. I was a part of 2 or 3 student organizations, and I know it can be difficult to get groups together. I think if you're really active, which it sounds like you are, Laura, I would just keep at it. I would also recommend trying to schedule meetings with other groups regularly, that you have a set time to check in, or before the school year starts to collaborate together. And I know getting campus events at Purdue can be more difficult now with certain restrictions that Purdue has put in place. But those are always good opportunities to do, maybe like a movie night or screening event. Those always had really big turnouts, and also involving your professors to promote the event or somehow offer extra credit for people to go. That can also get people in the door. But I know the Anthropology Club at Purdue always had this end of the year cookout event that more and more people would come to. You can always try to do something like that with other groups, where it's a big effort in the spring to create an end of semester event. I'm sure those are a couple starting points, hopefully.
Kathy Simple, would you like to join us and tell our group a little bit about what you're doing? Okay, while we wait. Okay, so Jennifer McNeely, what is HEC doing with outreach into high schools, how can local folks get into area high schools or get ATC educational materials into local high schools and combat the early indoctrination of industry groups already in the schools through programs like Future Farmers of America, which in my area seems to be teaching industrial agriculture and not so much about alternative regenerative ag? I'll answer that in one specific sense, Jennifer. It's an awesome question. We are organizing 2 tracks of workshops, even in the middle of the pandemic. One is related to solar energy, and the other is related to CAFOs. And of course, I know we've partnered with you when we've been down in Decatur County on the CAFO front. But with respect to solar workshops, we want very intentionally to partner with high schools because kind of the big picture mission of our solar workshops is to get more people to install solar before state and federal incentives roll out, and schools can get the blessing of 20 to 25 to 30 years of energy cost reliability, since solar provides a good portion of their power. So when we've been organizing these solar workshops, we've been very intentionally wanted to partner with kind of the prominent high schools in the area. We're in the middle of organizing a workshop in Valparaiso and have been in discussions with Valpo High School as an example. With respect to confined animal feeding operations and factory farms, as you know, Kim Ferraro, Jen Jenkins, and Susie McGovern on our team have been working on these different CAFO workshops. And we've kind of changed the way that we think about these from focusing on all of the environmental risks and, of course, the animal harm that is done through the factory farm system to talking about the new paradigm. And when we were having internal discussions about these workshops, we very intentionally said, how can we get students to be engaged? And part of that is by framing this around issues of regenerative ag. So it's a great question. I hope we're going to keep getting better at high school engagement.
Let's see, is Kathy still here? Let's see, I did see that. I'm not seeing a request on my end for the moderation. If you wanted to try again to get on the screen.
Satashma asked a really great question. Something that I've learned through my own experience with outreach is that climate reports and what scientists say about climate change can be quite confounding to the public. What are some of the simplest yet most effective ways to communicate about climate change? I'll just very briefly answer that, and Delaney, I'm sure you'll have additional thoughts to share. It's an absolutely astute point, and I'll say 2 things. One, messenger matters so much here, and then of course, to speak to your point, making it simple to understand. And the Purdue Climate Change Research Center has produced infographics and YouTube videos that I really think are very accessible. So these infographics really kind of boil down what are the core climate impacts facing the state. And they really boil down climate science. And once they've done that better job in kind of simplifying the message while keeping it scientifically credible, they've not gone out into the lion's den, so to speak. They actually held their first ever briefing of lawmakers in the Indiana General Assembly in 2020, in which they spoke before highly conservative lawmakers about climate change. The second thing I would mention is just how important it is to pair people up from the constituency that you're trying to engage on climate change with a leader in there. And a great example is in the agricultural community, where soil and water conservation-minded farmers who have a mastery over both agriculture and conservation have come to be really credible messengers on climate change, to talk about the fact that climate change is leading to more intense storms, which is leading to runoff of precious soil and precious agrochemicals that are needed to, grow those plants. And so I think if we can facilitate more of that pairing between credible messengers within the constituency and the constituency that we're trying to engage, will make more headway on climate science education.
Yes. I would say from stuff that I've learned, at least in my master's on communicating climate change, it's especially important to relate it to local issues, like Jesse was saying, something that is close to home, something that people can think about, instead of these global big ideas about climate change. A lot of the time, it also needs to be repeated over and over. This needs to be something that is a part of people's lives on a daily basis that they need to think about, or it's going to be forgotten. So kind of closing that psychological distance people feel with, oh, sea levels are rising, but we're in the Midwest, which is especially hard to conceptualize and think about. It's always great to know your audience and relate it to them.
Great points, Delaney. We've got Kathy Sipple, a great friend of ours from Valparaiso. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, thanks so much for giving me a moment to share my offer. Yeah, just to piggyback on what you were saying just now, I mean, this is kind of my reason for wanting to offer this game. Have you all read this book yet? Paul Hawken's new book, Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation. It's a follow-up to his book Drawdown, where he chronicled the 100 top climate solutions, and people could kind of see, what solutions, if done to scale, would not only reduce but reverse global warming by, the years that we've got coming up. And this one kind of breaks it down even further. But this game that I'm offering is like an introduction to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so kind of top level, but it's a 3-hour commitment. So during that time, I'm really hoping I can sit down with people, find out what they're interested in, and then plug them in to organizations like your own or Earth Charter Indiana, who I work with, or any of the other numerous organizations that I've, had the privilege of learning about throughout these last 12 years or so. So yeah, Jennifer asked about the title. I'll pop that into chat, but it's Paul Hawken, and it's Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation, Regeneration. So I'm offering, a free discount code. You can put in the word helper. And what you're doing is helping me to perfect my skills. I'm the very first person that's been trained as a facilitator in the US. This game, that's not really a game, came out of Japan. And the gentleman who I'm working with is actually an Indiana native. So he was really excited to learn that people in Indiana cared about this and wanted to start, adopting this process. So anyway, what I'm really hoping to do is get intergenerational groups, because, this is the world that we're creating. This is who we're turning it over to. So to get the generation that's coming, and also people who are, older like me, and everybody in between and older too. So anyway, that's about it. I'll turn it back to you, Delaney, unless anybody else has questions or you have questions for me.
Thanks very much, Kathy. Really appreciate that. We'll definitely spread the word about this very kind opportunity of yours. And I think we're looking at the clock here with just a couple of minutes to go, so we should probably try to take a crack and answer some more of these questions. Deb Chubb from Northwest Indiana. Hello, Deb. Glad to have you with us. You asked, how do we contact credible farmers who are committed to sustainable food production? One suggestion is connecting with the county level soil and water conservation district. They are really at the forefront of a lot of climate solutions without there having been intentionally called climate solutions. Things like two-stage ditches, no tillage, agriculture, conservation tillage, cover cropping, all things that ultimately are about retaining soil and water, and ultimately making our agricultural systems more resilient in the face of anticipated more frequent and more intense flooding. So definitely one group to build a more meaningful relationship with. Of course, the Indiana Farmers Union would also stand out too. I know they don't have as big of a footprint in Indiana, but I would give a shout out to them too. Jennifer asks, fantastic, thanks. How can we local folks help support AGC in these efforts regarding solar? Are you partnering with REMCs? Thank you for the offer on the first point. How do you help AGC in these efforts? Well, kind of generically speaking, I would say please do follow us on social media, because that really proves to be the best way that we stay in touch with our supporters and our partners. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are the three most common ones. We're getting more involved into LinkedIn thanks to Marianne Holland on our team, who heads our development team. The other question you had is about REMCs, which are rural electric cooperatives and rural electric membership cooperatives. And these really occupy, geographically speaking, a pretty large footprint of Indiana. They provide power to rural communities across Indiana. And to answer your question, Jennifer, we don't have kind of a universal relationship with REMCs. Some of them are stridently anti-renewable energy, for example, but others are great innovators. I'm thinking of Titmont Solar, not too far from where Delaney grew up, where that particular REMC is a real leader in the entire Midwest on community-based solar. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis when it comes to REMCs. Okay, let's see. Okay, Lynn Jenkins, who has a wealth of wisdom on agriculture, says the problem with no-till is that it demands a lot more chemical use, and that affects the water. Well, thank you for educating us on that. Okay, guys, we probably only have a minute or so left. If you have any final questions for us, please do put it in the chat, and we'll be starting our next panel discussion very shortly. Delaney, is there anything you'd like to share, your words of wisdom on organizing while we wait for any final questions?
I would say that keeping a positive attitude and being optimistic, going into doing a lot of outreach is going to be a great tool to have. And again, relating anything you do back to whoever you're speaking to try to get action is important across different barriers such as age, gender, race, etc. And hopefully we can carry that all into this spring legislative session.
Great points. One point I would want to add is simply the power of persistently opening the conversation about sustainability with everybody who is in a position to make big change on sustainability. What do I mean by that point? Well, first and foremost, it's to please make the effort to schedule a Zoom meeting with your state representative and state senator before the end of 2021. Let them know your priorities, even if it's 15 minutes, even if it is just very high level. They need to know that there is a pro-environmental constituency in their community. That's number one. Number two, find other avenues to get the sustainability conversation going on. Maybe you've got a humble and down-to-earth city council person. Maybe you've got, to Gary Davis's point, a utility that is open-minded to new ways of providing new services, such as Hendrix Power is doing and pushing for solar and electric vehicles. Build a relationship, because I think everyone in the end wants to do something good for environmental stewardship, but they need to be seeded ideas. And all of you here who have a wealth of knowledge attending are those people who can plant those seeds. And then eventually those will show up as new rebate programs, new incentive programs on the part of companies, new green practices that are being offered related to making things more bike friendly or more compost friendly, etc. So please keep that conversation going, no matter how frustrating our state can be politically.
Yes. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you. All right. Well, one final call, because I know we're kind of running past our scheduled time. Well, what do you think, Delaney? Should we wrap up so folks can head over to the next session?
Yes, I think so. And we'll be back. I'll be back here later in the afternoon with Tim for another outreach session. If you have any more questions that we didn't answer.
That's great. Thank you, Delaney. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Please keep dropping your questions in the event chat that we didn't get to in this session chat, and I'm sure that Delaney and Tim can field them in the next session chat.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone.